thank you for joining us this Friday and being one of our great guests.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yes, definitely, definitely. So next we have Dianne Bailey. She's the owner of the Conditioning Classroom. She's authored 3 books. She's also a national speaker that loves to help each person create a healthy lifestyle of health and fitness. And she's the creator of the Open the Door to Tai Chi system. Thank you, Dianne.
You.
And next we have Dr. Katey Forth. She's an expert in postural stability. She conducted a postdoctoral fellowship at NASA and has created award-winning balance training programs for older adults. She's the CEO of Zebrio, where they invent cutting-edge technology to help the world from falling safely down. Hopefully I said that all correctly. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Forth.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, great stuff, great stuff. So at the moment, our last panel member is not here yet, but we're going to get it rolling. We got so much good stuff to talk about. And as he joins in, I'll make sure that we intro him and include him in all the great questions. Again, my name is Tyler Valencia, and I'm stepping in for Janice Jakes, the owner of FitnessFest, as she helps out with this reservation project that she's got going on right now. So our topic today, advancing active aging programming. When we started talking about the topic, really what started to pop into my head is, so my background, just a little bit of background, my education is a lot in sport performance. And as we start to see some of these topics in sport performance trickle into the active aging population, you do see a lot of similarities. You see the reaction time, you see things about dual task training, things that you see some of the high-end athletes doing. You see a lot of that coming across and being shown on social media, ESPN, things as that. So today we're going to talk about advancing all that great stuff. So our first question, what changes brought on by the pandemic have you seen this year with your older adult clients? So changes in training, changes in mindset, and changes in overall healthy. Let's start that off with Dianne. Can you kick us off with that?
Sure. With my clients here at the Conditioning Classroom, it really has been all over the board. There's differences. There are people, I'm sure in your community the same way, that some of them are like so ready to be back and nothing has changed in their world, really. They are so ready to be back in the studio working out. Some of them are a little bit more cautious. They're back in the studio, but they're absolutely wanting to be as careful as possible and appreciate our efforts to make sure that the studio is as clean as possible. And then there are people that are, quite frankly, just waiting for a vaccine and they're hunkering down. I think that the thing that popped into my head for the biggest impact is I think the social isolation has really impacted people the most. It has impacted our mental health, and that part of not being able to get together like we used to, not being able to feel community has really hurt, especially our older population. And it's hurt me, and I am in the older population, but even though I get to see my clients, I still feel that isolation. And I think that that's a part that we often don't think of as exercise physiologists, as owners of studios. We provide a community, and it's very important for people's mental health as well as their physical health.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And before we get to the next guest, please make sure that you drop in questions too as we go through all these questions, these set questions, if you have something, and we can make sure that we swing back to those at the end. Okay. So Dr. Forth, can you continue on with that?
Absolutely. Well, let's see. I am an athlete and as well as a scientist, and I think to your comment about the application of exercise physiology to older adults, well, it's all the same thing. There's no sudden split when we hit a certain age. Life is sport. We train for life, we train for sport, we train for whatever function we're trying to achieve. And just as Dianne said, if you think about sport in isolation, like if you think about why does anybody play soccer? Yes, there's the thrill. There's lots of things they get out of it physically, but they get that connection with their teammates. Even if you are a individual athlete, the connection with your coach, your connection with the competitors. When you travel and you see your international competitors, perhaps, these are some of the very rich things that I think when we start talking about older adults, it's very easy to try and separate yourself as that's a them problem, that's a something else, it's just something they have to deal with. But no, life is sport. We are trying to get all of these things out of our life to be healthy. And so totally agree with you there, Dianne. That connected piece with physical activity is very much a core part of it. Now, for myself, I'm looking more at trends across populations and what is the effect of a pandemic across these bigger populations. We are seeing that data out of Australia showing that there's a 30% increase in falls in residential care since COVID. So that detraining effect is a measurable effect with respect to the rates of falls. So we know detraining is occurring. Going back to that sport is life is sport kind of reference, the goals have suddenly kind of been reduced. It's harder to get yourself motivated to do something when any, I don't know, international travel or any dancing at somebody's wedding, all of these milestones and goals that people had that they were now training towards, those have been taken away too. So we've lost the connectedness, we've lost that future goal to motivate us to do the exercise. And now we're left with okay, just for your sheer health, whereas people don't want to go outside for the risk that's out there. So the trends we're seeing is obviously trends not good in terms of increased fall rates, but also the trends to people trying to find ways to do some level of activity at home or trying to maintain themselves as they had in their life. You know, it's a real split. You've got telemedicine that is along the same kind of parallels. People are wanting to do as much as they can from home. So everything's shifting, as you all know. And I think it's really important for us to think about the whole person when we're trying to think about their exercise habits. So I agree.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Dr. Ritchie, could you round us out on that one?
Sure. Well, I think I'll hit a couple things that they didn't mention. I agree with all of those comments. I would say it's accelerated some things in the industry almost overnight. I think things that many fitness businesses were thinking, oh, I'll get to that in 2 years, maybe 4 years, maybe 5 years. They literally had to jump to overnight. And, you know, I should have an online coaching program and an online fitness support, and I should support my clients through texting and you just, you know, Facebook Lives, YouTube membership, all those sorts of things. All of a sudden, well, I think I better do that tomorrow. Really got accelerated with COVID. And I think we sort of learned two things from that. One, even the oldest clients will jump to technology if they're forced to. I mean, we had clients in their 80s and 90s who were jumping to technology. What sort of tripod do I need to order? Can I use my iPad for this? And, you know, they will embrace technology when they're forced to. It's sort of interesting. We have said for a long time, oh, well, I don't know if older people will do the online training thing. Well, if they have to, they will. And so we saw that, and we saw that very quickly. And we saw many fitness operators realizing, hey, this online fitness thing isn't so bad. I can train people from my living room and in my pajamas. But what we also saw was people were desperate for that social piece, like Dianne said. So many clients were like, hey, this online training thing's really cool, but when do I get to come back to the gym? I really want to come back to the gym. I miss my training buddies. I miss my trainer. I miss the equipment. I miss leaving my living room. So I think what we realized was online fitness is here to stay, and it's a huge resource, but there's still a huge segment of the population that loves the social aspect of exercise. They love the being with their trainer. They love leaving their home and going to the gym. And so I think we've learned there's really a much bigger opportunity to be helping people through technology, and that the gym isn't going away, but it may look different over the next year or two. And I think many trainers have realized technology is an additional resource And older people will pick up technology. So don't think that people in their 80s and 90s won't train via Zoom, Facebook Live, all these sorts of methods.
I mean, it's interesting because it's similar parallels, of course, with telemedicine. And there was that instant flood. It was up to about 80% of, even 85% of patient interactions were suddenly in the telemedicine style. And it's already shifted back to around 20, 25, 30%. So I think in healthcare, they're trying to work out where is that balance? Where is the sweet spot of how much is in person versus how much is remote? And I think in the fitness industry, it's the same thing. You've got to try and work out what is the right proportion of in-person to external help.
Good points. Good points. And to quickly touch on what Dr. Dan Ritchie mentioned about the acceleration of virtual fitness, I can honestly say that where I live in Phoenix and Chandler, Arizona, I could throw a rock and there's
Can
6
anybody else
different
hear him?
gyms. And can Dr. Forth, could you not hear me? Are we having some audio issues here?
No, you're in.
I hear you fine.
Okay. But anyways, but with the acceleration of virtual training, you could see that some of these gyms out here, I mean, we got big name brands out in Phoenix. A lot of them already had virtual training platforms, and a lot of those just accelerated. Now, chains that were maybe thinking about it, just how Dr. Ritchie said, that we're thinking about it, okay, in a couple months, a year from now, or with the mobile texting and getting a hold of individuals, that all just quickly rushed in there. So the competition that you're facing, you can definitely do it because, again, the points that everybody else mentioned with the connection, people still want that connection that they got from going to the gym. So points to think about with your own virtual training platform, with how can you create the connection, how can you create a professional setting with your online training. So all good stuff right there, really great stuff. So our next question, we're going to start with Dianne again. Dianne, what are 1 to 2 of your go-to exercises that you utilize when doing virtual training with a client? And I understand that some of our panel members might not do virtual training, but from your perspective and your understanding of virtual training, please take all those into consideration. So Dianne, let's get it going.
Sure, we do virtual training for the conditioning classroom. I do virtual training for my Tai Chi students as well. It was a very interesting question that when my first thought was go-to exercises, my first real connection with that was, well, maybe I can think of my go-to equipment, but every workout is so, every person is so individualized. I really don't have 2 go-to exercises. I asked my trainers that question and they answered it in the same way. They said, we can't answer that question because, I'm thinking of Molly and she can do whatever. And then I'm thinking of Beverly, who's 86, and I really have to be very careful with what I'm doing because I'm not there. I'm not being able to spot her. One of my other trainers said, I love the stability ball, but I have a client that I really don't feel comfortable with them alone in their house on that stability ball because they're not stable enough yet. So as far as go-to exercises, that was really an odd question to me because every workout is so individualized that it depends on the person's ability. It depends on where they are working out, what their environment is, because we are concerned about fall risk. We're concerned about their abilities and their goals. What are their goals? Just because they're in a virtual setting, all of a sudden doesn't mean the goals become homogeneous. It's all over the board again, where some people still just want to be healthy and some people are still working towards a specific event or a specific athletic pursuit. So I apologize for not directly answering that question as far as exercises, but I really can't give you a specific exercise. Obviously with my Tai Chi people, that's a different world. We work on specific movements, and we work on applying the underlying principles. So that's a different kind of world. When you're talking personal trainer, I can't answer a specific exercise.
No worries, no worries. So, Dr. Ritchie, can you follow up with that?
Well, for the most part, I tend to agree with Dianne because the nature of our clientele, for sure, one-on-one training, I think that's going to be the case. It's going to be very, what does the client need? Now, we continue to do about 4 online group training sessions a day. And in the group training session, I would say a couple of our go-to exercises are pretty similar, and they're mostly all warm-up based routine things that most of our group clients can do. And so those are a couple simple things that we encourage people to be doing around the house regularly anyway. So we typically start with some marching in place. We do some calf raises or just, up on your tiptoes, and we encourage them to do that at like the kitchen counter. Or with a chair somewhere where they're going to be safe. And then the third one, we do what we call some modified jumping jacks, which essentially are just big to big side steps or side shuffles. A handful of our clients can actually do jumping jacks. And so those would be sort of our 3 typical warm-up based moves. And we actually encourage our clients to do those on a daily basis, and we encourage them to be doing something every day, because I think the big thing we've realized is if they're only tuning in to train with us 3 times a week for 30 minutes via Zoom, and they're not leaving their home and they're not getting out, like their physical activity is still declining even though they're training with us. So we try to encourage them to do something every day outside of training with us, whether it's taking a walk. We've had some walking challenges, like who's going to get their 10,000 steps in every day this week, who's going to take a 2-mile walk, who's going to, so we've done a couple different, now that the weather is getting colder, that's going to get a little bit more interesting. So we'll have to get more creative.
Good stuff. I would say it painted a good picture for the virtual training, and especially with the group setting. I think that that's a good thing for a lot of people on this to think about how they can incorporate that into their business model. Dr. Forth, can you follow up this question?
Yeah, well, I like to bring out of this world perspective, being a former NASA scientist. So my comment here is that, gravity, that's the thing we do at NASA. And falling down is a gravity problem. So my answer to this question is going to be the anti-gravity extensors. You need to do something to build those up. So quadriceps, gluteus maximus, these 2 muscle groups are something that need to be worked on, and just simply up and down in a chair. The CDC recommends that, and they recommend it because it's the anti-gravity extensor muscle. So if I was to say one thing, it's like, let's do some quads and bum and up and down in a chair. But I totally agree with the personalization of it. That is most definitely critical. And when you're talking about improving the overall health, wellness, and performance capability, you're also really trying to think through that path of sensory information to motor control. And so with that, there is many different ways that you can vary exercises to make it specific to somebody's needs, so that the challenge is specific to the sensory challenge you need and also the motor challenge that you need. So lots of personalization opportunities within exercises. But if I was going to pick one, get up and down in a chair and get those quads and bum going.
Good stuff. Very good stuff. And we're actually going to start the next question with you as well, Dr. Forth, about fall prevention. And, this is a big question to think about with the advancement or even just the topic in general. But do you feel that balance and fall prevention are still the main focus when working with the older adult population? And feel free to bring in the research that you've already been talking about. I know that that's stuff that I personally like to hear about, and I know that our audience does too.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be. So if it's not, then it should. I think, we know that 1 in 4 older adults fall down every year. So that's, about 28% at the moment. That's if you're over 65. It approximately doubles by the time you're 80. So that in itself should shock everybody, because if you have older clients, some of them are going to fall this year. And as I said, the trends are not going favorably because of COVID and the like. So the trouble with fall prevention is that people often don't view themselves as a fall risk. Everybody here is not viewing themselves as being a fall risk, but our balance could be a little bit off today. It does actually change every day on just a wide variety of different things. So with that, like I said, if it's not part of a training program, it absolutely should be. There needs to be at least a minimum of 10 minutes, 3 times a week to get the changes in the brain to actually elicit more permanent responses to have better balance. So yeah, there's some really good guidelines, and not to take Dianne's thunder away from her, but Tai Chi is the one exercise across the board that has consistently demonstrated that it is preventing falls. And I think part of that to think about in any balance training that people do is what planes of motion is the body being put through, and are you keeping them in that sitting, standing, lying down plane, or are they actually, even if it's slowly moving to other planes, so that the sensory system can adapt and understand and recalibrate itself? These are the things that do need to be done, but that doesn't mean that it's all in isolation, because you can wrap it up in strength and aerobic capacity as well. So, but it should very much be front of mind for any trainer of an older adult.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Dianne, can you chime in?
Well, thank you very much, Catherine, for stealing my thunder. That's really okay, because I do enjoy talking about Tai Chi and talking about how good it is for balance. And it doesn't have to be just in a class. It can be in an individual training appointment as well. You can take the principles that we talked about, the principles of understanding your weight shift. We call it substantial and insubstantial. Understanding your columns, your postural, how you're standing. With the movement part of Tai Chi is, how many falls really happen when somebody is standing perfectly still, right? It's usually when somebody's moving. And that's where Tai Chi is so beautiful, because it is movement balance. It is dynamic balance training. And, as far as putting that in programming for all of of course, strength is important. Of course, cardiovascular training is important. This is a piece of the puzzle, though, that if you're missing that piece of the puzzle, it's a critical whole. You need to have that balanced training. And again, Tai Chi is one of those avenues, that's a piece of the puzzle again, that you can use that helps people understand in a kind of fun way, because they're learning something new. They're not just working on balance. They're actually learning something, and yet it applies to their everyday life. It applies to their balance. So that's part of the beauty of Tai Chi as well. I think in our environment today, it also helps that you can do Tai Chi with no equipment, that it's done you can do it in a small space. You can do it virtually. So that, if you are thinking about adding programming for balance adding stuff to your programming for balance, consider adding Tai Chi, because it is very accessible to everyone.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Dr. Ritchie?
Well, how long do we have? I could spend a long time on this topic, but I'll just hit a couple bullet points from our newsletter this Wednesday. We're faced with really an epidemic beyond what I think we can understand in terms of the numbers, and we have to continue to get serious about this. I mean, about 3 million older people are showing up to the ER every year with fall-related injuries. It's the number one cause of accidental death for people over the age of 65. I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling that from age 1 to 64, it's motor vehicle accident. And then all of a sudden, when you turn 65, it's you can't stay on your own 2 feet anymore. And those numbers are going to double in the next 10 to 15 years because the population over 65 is going to grow so fast. And so we have to do something about it. And I think we way represent it when we say, oh, there's 20 to 25,000 accidental fall deaths a year, because there's about 400,000 hip fractures a year, and those never get listed as a cause of death, right? I mean, it's very rare that someone falls and breaks a hip and dies because of that, but they die 6 months later because of it. And nobody says, oh, grandma died because she fell and broke her hip 6 months ago. They say, oh, grandma started to decline a little bit, then she had that accident, she fell and she broke her hip and was an unfortunate. It's like, no, if she'd been training her balance, she might have lived 10 more years, right? We got robbed of 10 Thanksgivings and 10 Christmases and 10 holidays. And I don't know how many grandchildren's weddings she might have danced at if she'd been training her balance. And we miss it because we're like, oh, she fell and broke her hip and then declined from there. And when you look at those statistics, they're alarming to me, because about 100,000 people a year do not recover from breaking their hip. And so we have to intervene before that, right? It's not, oh, I'm 75, therefore I fall and break a hip. It's, I need to be training balance so that I never fall and break my hip. And so we have to start waking up to the fact that this is a $50 billion health crisis, fall-related injuries, $50 billion. And those numbers are a couple of years ago. It's probably bigger than that in 2020. And I expect in 21 and 22, even from what Katey sort of hinted at, falls are already climbing from COVID. 21 and 22, we're going to see record numbers of emergency room visits for fall related injuries because people are being told to stay home. They're being less active in their nursing home and their retirement community. I mean, the state of the art retirement communities in my town have shut their fitness facilities down because they don't want their residents congregating. I'm like, well, if they're not congregating to exercise, then they're declining. And so we're going to see a rise in fall related injuries. And that's a huge concern, because that's going to be a huge cost on our healthcare system. It's going to be a huge cost on our caregiver system. And we're going to lose a lot of people that really should be around with a great quality of life for another 5 to 10 years.
Yeah,
And really,
yeah.
that means that when you do get access to somebody, when they first come to you, you've really got to have that concept of prehab in your mind of like, we've got to get their balance up to scratch so that when they're out and about, they actually are going to be safe. So it's almost as if this is an even greater priority for them. So not so important about the aerobic capacity right now. Like, let's get their balance going right off the get-go. And balance is very neurally based. And so it's something that can actually be improved quite quickly. You can improve things in 35 days, certainly 4 to 8 weeks. You can see quite substantial improvements with it, but you have to stick with it, because if you don't continually train it for a good 6 to 12 months, you then lose it, just like anything else. If you don't use it, you lose it. So I think there's an opportunity for all trainers listening that when you get your hands on somebody, you can actually move them through very quickly so that they are safe for life. Life is scored.
Dr. Ritchie, I know that you do work with Ryan Glatt, and I know that he's very much into the cognitive end of training and brain training and associating that with exercise. Has he shared with anything with kind of a follow-up question here, but has he shared with you anything interesting that might pertain to the conversation today?
Yeah, well, similar to what I just mentioned about, the increase in falling, and I see somebody asking about my stats about falling, so I'll share that newsletter link here in just a second. Ryan is really concerned that we're going to see an increase in cognitive issues due to isolation, lack of social activities. I mean, even the activities like I don't get to go to my bridge club anymore is going to have an impact on people's cognitive function, right? I mean, 3 times a week, maybe I go and I play cards. A couple times a week, I volunteer to read to 3rd graders. All those activities are gone. And now I'm looking at the same walls in my home, and that's going to increase cognitive decline at a much faster rate. In fact, people who probably we wouldn't really notice much measurable cognitive decline for several years, now all of a sudden are put in this hyper state of isolation and lack of social activities. And so Ryan's biggest concern is that COVID is going to drive some increases in cognitive decline simply due to the lack of social activities. We know socialization, social activities, social programming is huge for maintaining cognitive function. And what's one of the first things we did with COVID was we removed those things from so many of us, which of course impacts mental health and so many different things. But for our oldest clients, those over 80 and 85, right, we've removed hugs, we've removed touch, we've removed physical contact, all these sorts of things, which really drive cognitive stimulation. And even simple activities, like getting together with your ladies knitting club and your church volunteer groups, and all these things that we removed have a huge impact on cognitive function. And of course, all of those things have some sort of a physical element, right? You're not leaving your home to go do these things. You're not participating in these activities. And so those things go hand in hand. And that's a big concern that Ryan has shared. And I couldn't agree more. We've seen that with some of our clients. They're longing to be with another human, is really real, especially for people that live alone, widows and widowers, people that are living all by themselves. It's a big concern.
Good
Can
stuff.
I add another commercial for Tai Chi?
Yeah.
Because it is proven to help with executive functioning, to improve executive functioning, to improve focus, that learning new movements, having to memorize a sequence of a form, having to apply those principles of the substantial and insubstantial while you're moving, having to dual task like that, all of that is improving your executive functioning, your mental health. So again, Tai Chi is a very approachable, very important form of exercise. Don't think that just because it's slow moving, it's not really doing anything. It's actually doing quite a bit.
Good stuff. Thank you for adding that in, Dianne. So Dr. Osar just joined us, and I actually want to take a step back. Thank you for coming in, Dr. Osar. I know you have a very busy schedule, so I appreciate it. So for everyone, Dr. Osar, he's the president, co-founder of the Institute for Integrative Health and Fitness Education. He's an international presenter. It specializes in rehab strategies for general pop, and just a great educator and someone that I always enjoy talking with. So I'm going to take half a step back, and I'm going to have Dr. Osar answer our first question. And this is my doing here to make a little pivot here back to first question, and then we'll jump back and finish. But Dr. Osar, can you talk about changes brought on by the pandemic that you've seen this year with your older adult clients, changes in training, changes in mindset, changes in overall in their health?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I do apologize for being late. It's my fault. I got sidetracked on the time change out here from you guys out there. So I do apologize. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's sort of as Dan and Dianne were alluding to, there's obviously been the lack of socialism, right? The ability to get together and use the time together just for caring, for sharing, for even things like complaining, right? People want to come and get together and just complain, get things off their chest. And without the ability, you can do that over the phone. You can do that over, virtual social media type of situations, but it's not the same when somebody's in the room with you, when you're actually congregating with other people and doing things socially. So there's obviously that aspect of it as well. And what I've seen with a lot of our older clients and what we hear from our community of fitness professionals as well is, some of their older clients were just waiting and are just waiting. They're still waiting. Like, well, I'll get to it when they get a vaccine. And even though there's talk of a vaccine coming, they're still not really being proactive about their health. And if there's ever a time that this sort of pandemic could teach us, is you have to be proactive about your health. And the ones, I'll give you an example of one of my clients. Joel is 85 years of age, and because his wife has sort of encouraged him, he has been super proactive. I mean, he literally has not left his house maybe twice since March. So since we got locked down on March 21st here in Chicagoland area, he has not left his apartment besides, twice to go on a car ride. And he actually has stayed consistent with his program 3 to 4 times a week. And he's one of the few people, however, that I've seen that has actually gotten better. His balance has gotten better. His strength has gotten better. His mass, he's actually got glute mass now. I literally thought, I was like, man, he's wearing some really baggy pants. And then I was like, holy cow, no, that's his glutes. Like, he actually developed glute mass. And it's actually because he's doing it more frequently now because his wife is really aware of the fact that he's just not getting out of the house. So you definitely can use this time proactively and be just like Joel, right? However, there are too many individuals that are just using this as, I don't want to say as excuse. I don't know if excuse is the right word, but an opportunity to not be as proactive as they can and just sort of wait. So that's the thing that we're seeing. And so we're seeing people's weight increase, their balance decrease, their strength decrease, their endurance decrease, and a lot of those cardiac risk factors, diabetes, and those other type of things start to increase in risk. So it's really, it's a challenging time, and it's super important for us as health and fitness professionals to continue to encourage our clients to be proactive during this time and give them things that they can do in their house and just show them simple, easy things. Just get them started with simple, easy things. And I'm sure you guys have either talked about that or we're leading into that as well.
Good stuff. So as we go to our last question, we're going to be talking about education here, and our panel, a lot of education assembled for this. So what COVID influenced topics do you think will be prevalent in upcoming webinars, certifications, etc.? So Dr. Ritchie, why don't you kick us off with this one?
Oh man, upcoming webinars. I honestly, there's so many, but I think I like to keep it simple. So I tend to steer towards how do we empower people, and Evan sort of hinted at it, like people have to be proactive about taking care of their own health. So I like to encourage people, how can you do something for 15 minutes a day that's going to really help your health, your fitness, your well-being? And I think having hour-long workouts for a lot of people is too overwhelming, especially when we know most people aren't exercising at all. So for me, I like to see more education on short, simple routines, 10-minute, 15-minute workouts. Look, if you're a go-getter, great. Stack 2, 3, 4 of those together. We've taught some of our older clients, like, you can't sit around on Thursday all day binging Netflix because you trained with your trainer on Wednesday. Like, that doesn't cut it. So find something to do. And we've given them tons of segments on YouTube and Facebook and different places where they can do a 10-minute balance workout. They can do a 15-minute stretching workout. They can do a 15-minute Tai Chi workout. They can do 20 minutes of, lots of different things. So you don't have to do the same thing every day. But I think short snippets, what can you effectively do and do consistently, I think can be really helpful, because I think a lot of people, they get overwhelmed with thinking, oh, do I really have to work out for an hour? No, just do something for 15 minutes. Take a break from the 7th episode of whatever you're binging on Netflix and move for 15 minutes, for crying out loud. And then you can go back to your show. And then after a couple episodes, same thing, do 15 minutes of something else. So we've got to be moving more, but I think less is more. Let's simplify it. We don't have to overwhelm people with hour-long workouts.
Yep, Diane.
Can I piggyback on that? Just
Yeah.
I think as an industry, just to Dan's point, we need to change our messaging, and we need to figure out, how do we market ourselves in such a way that we're not a hobby for the young bodies that are just trying to be the best looking that they can. That exercise is essential. Exercise is something that you need to be doing, to Dan's point, every day. We don't just build bodies, we build vitality, we build balance, we build mental health. we build our immune system. You know, so as fitness professionals, I think we need to learn, how are we marketing our services? How are we reaching people with the message that this isn't just about being the best in your bikini. This is about being healthy, and it is essential to your well-being for the rest of your life.
Good stuff. Good point. Dr. Forth, why don't you follow that up?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of misconceptions.
Oh.
Can you hear me all right?
There we go.
Yeah, I was told the host muted me. Must not have said a good thing. So there's a lot of, what I was saying, there's a lot of misconceptions out there and a lot of myths that we need to just break open. I pretty much drummed home the message of life as sport. So that was one that, you know, I was here to try and break that one down. But with the importance of balance and how necessary it is for mobility and for fall prevention, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. For example, do you know that your balance changes every day or can change every day? Do you know that if you have one bad night's sleep, it can drop your balance capability up to 40%? You know, there's so much that people need to learn, because as Dan had said, it's not like you hit 75 and suddenly you're at full risk. The decline's happening in your 30s and your 40s, and even in your 20s if you're not doing very much. And so certainly for myself and a Zebra, I'm really passionate about that education. We have created an online course for trainers so that they can learn the science behind balance, and then also structured a personalized balance training program for them so they can become balance specialists. And we want that. We want the world to have people who have this information so they can spread the information to help the whole general community understand these things so that they value it and then take action. I think one thing that hasn't been mentioned here is the value of measuring as well. Fitbit had a pretty sizable impact on the world, that suddenly you measure something, people wanted to take more steps. And balance is the same. We found that when you measure balance, suddenly people are aware of it and they take action. We've seen a 54% reduction in falls from people just measuring their balance. So there's many pieces that are coming through now, whether it's online training, whether it's the connected exercise services that we've been talking about, but there's also measurement and ways that we can reach clients and empower them with the information so that they can then actually take control themselves, because there's a certain point we can tell them all we like, but it's just not actually penetrating.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Dr. Osar, why don't you round us out on this?
Awesome. Yeah, obviously we need more education. And as Dianne alluded to, Dan alluded to this as well, and Dr. Forth also mentioned this, we are the solution to the healthcare crisis, especially now when we think about it, right? When you think about the things that are going to break down people's health, right? Falls, being overweight, lack of joint mobility, and being reliant on painkillers, cardiovascular risk factors. So when you think of the profession that is in the best position for addressing those issues, it really is the fitness profession, working together hand in hand with health professionals as well. And our education has to be around up-leveling our skill set so that we can be part of that solution and not just another bunch of gimmicky exercise individuals that most people allude to. And as Dianne was saying, that we are professionals, right? We are the professionals that these individuals need to look towards and come to for scientific-based, evidence-based type workouts, and not just these trendy, like, hey, let me get you fit for, you know, or get a good glute burn. And unfortunately, that's how the industry is being portrayed. So education around up-leveling our skill set on the fundamentals of just proper posture and movements, because that's been linked to, they actually did a study where they looked at individuals' posture, and when an individual had a decrease of 3 centimeters in their height over the course of 10 years, they had increased risk of all mortality. So just a decrease in 3 centimeters of their height over 10 years. And we know lots of our clients, especially now during COVID, right, their posture is is decreasing even more significant than that. So fundamental education of posture and movement and balance and just simple things like Dan said, the shorter workouts, absolutely not overwhelming these individuals that aren't doing anything with hour-long programs, but just simple things that they can plug into their day. And then also sort of around that behavior modification, because that's really what it's about, is getting people to do the work. They understand, relatively speaking, that they need to exercise and be more active, but how do you create those behaviors and tie it to some of their existing behaviors so that it becomes an everyday part of their life? And Dr. Forth had a great point that when you measure things, it does get done and does motivate individuals to continue to do those things. So, you know, the education and then being able to measure it so that people are, number one, encouraged, and they also are, they're being held accountable to doing it and then visually seeing the results of their activity.
Yeah, good stuff. And to think about virtual training and even online education, one of the benefits that I've always talked about with online education is that people can do it whenever they want. Now, taking that to virtual training, that's one of the things that I'll say that I've seen shift. What I've shifted with one of my businesses, instead of the hour-long workout, they're 45 minutes. But I think there's also a sweet spot in there. What I've seen just in doing some market research, I know that when one of the big players in the virtual workout realm, they, I think, released, it was either 20 or 30-minute classes for one of their formats, and people got all in uproar about it. So I think there's finding that sweet spot, whether it's depending on the format. Is it 30 minutes? Is it 45 minutes? Is it an hour? Maybe an hour is too much. I think that doing research with that to find out what that sweet spot is for it, because you do have to take into account people are at home. All they have to do is turn it off if they don't want to do it, but hopefully they do come back. And that's where, with just how Dr. Osar said, with the behavior modification, and even what Dr. Ford said, that the motivation to get back to it with the tracking, how do you create all those systems for your business with virtual training? So that wraps up our primary version of the questions. We did have a couple in there. If you have any questions before we wrap it up, please make sure to throw those in. One that came early on in it was about the specific equipment for virtual training. Dr. Ritchie, do you want to start that one off? I think that's a good one for you.
Sure. You know, it really depends on your go-to. So I saw that question early on. If you really like to train with kettlebells, like let's say you have a kettlebell studio, then you probably need to equip your clients with kettlebells so they can do that at home. I know a couple of training studios, they had a rent equipment program. So you could literally show up at their studio the week they shut down due to COVID, and you could rent the equipment you wanted for home training, kettlebells, dumbbells. And then at some point they even did equipment sales. If you primarily train with suspension straps like TRX or anchor point training, then you probably need to figure out a way to sell that gear to your clientele. I know Anchor Point Training, for example, we had them on this week, and they're doing a program. So trainers can sell suspension straps to their clients. Clients get a discount, trainer gets a commission. So some of it probably depends on what's your primary go-to training piece of equipment. If you really like to use medicine balls and dumbbells, then you probably need to figure out how you can get those ordered for your clients. In fact, I know some studios who said, hey, this is going to be our kit for you to train at home with us. It's going to cost you $150. It's going to be delivered straight to your door. It's going to have a resistance band, an agility ladder, some cones, and a medicine ball, right? What the gear that you want to train with online is probably what you need to be teaching your clients how to order. And keep it simple for them. In some cases, you might have to even take their credit card over the phone, make the order for them, ship it to their door, and boom, they've got the gear they need to train with you more effectively, as opposed to them being at home saying, oh, I don't have any dumbbells, so I can't do that, or I don't have a resistance band, so I'm not going to do that exercise. You know, like, no, let's make it easy for them. Take care of them, get the equipment ordered they need. Most of them will do what you tell them, you know, but be reasonable about it, right? They don't want to order $500 worth of equipment, so keep it simple.
Good stuff. And I'm gonna give a shameless plug for Chris Severs from Anchor Point Training. Good guy and real definition of an entrepreneur. So if you don't know what Anchor Point Training is, what their products are, check them out. I think that he now sells them on Amazon too. So go look it up. It's a good. I mean, so much variety with what he offers with those products. So check it out. Dr. Osar, do you want to follow that up on the equipment question?
Sure. We generally use resistance bands and a stability ball for in-home work because it's simple, easy for clients to get, and again, very low cost. And there's a lot of things you can do with those tools. So we have our clients get the Perform Better travel bands. Again, we make no money by saying that. We just like their bands, and they're easy to plug into the doorknob and hang on to your doorknob, and they don't tear because they have the extra hook on them. So those work really well, and they're short ones, so you can use it in a small amount of space, and there's lots of things you can do with those as well. Small little loop bands, even like longer pieces of resistance band. And then we just do a lot of body weight with either bands and or just body weight sort of balance work and or just body weight patterning. So we don't, our equipment list isn't extensive, but it's simple so that, to Dan's point early on, just make their workouts simple. So we just make it easy for clients to do it in a small amount of space. And it's also easy for them to put away when they're done with it, because they don't want to have all this equipment laying all over their house as well. So it's a pretty simple approach.
Nice. And before the next, I'll say the other panel guests talk about this, I just want to shamelessly plug again the Fit Pro Summit December 5th with FitnessFest. Use code Janice20 to save $20 at checkout. So I know that we're starting to wrap things up with here. If you have any more questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I think this is a great question, so I'm going to make sure that the rest of the panel has a shot at it. But before I do, just want to say thank you to everybody that came. I know that people are going to start signing off here as we're getting towards that hour mark. So everybody that agreed to come on this, thank you all for taking time out of your day this Friday to come and share your knowledge on this great topic. I know a lot of people, I saw them taking notes down. So really great stuff, panel, from you today. But Dr. Forth, why don't you take this question about the equipment as well?
Equipment, well.
I promised I didn't do that.
It's my fingers. It's my fat fingers on a touch screen. My apologies.
Can you hear me right now?
Yes. Sorry.
Censored. Yeah, I think, equipment, no equipment. You can do a lot with just your body weight as well. I think, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that if you measure your balance, then that is an important piece of equipment that you can have in your home for your clients. The Zebra Smart Scale measures balance and can predict whether someone's going to fall down in the next 12 months. So if you had a client that had that in their home, you can now find out, all right, so this is where they are. We've been doing a certain set of exercises with them, maybe with some equipment, maybe not. Is it enough? Is it really enough? And when you are more remote, it's harder for you to really get that deep understanding. And even if you do have them come in, it's not something that you can actually just look at them and really know. Obviously, everybody has a very good trained eye, but this scale actually exposes weaknesses that you can't actually see. So I think measurement. I'm a scientist, love a good piece of measurement. If you can measure it, then you can do something about it.
Great stuff, Dr. Forth. Dianne, why don't you round us out on this question?
Well, I agree with Dr. Forth that measurement is very important. And I want to piggyback on what Evan said, Dr. Osar, that, we keep our workouts, we really recommend stability ball and resistance bands for home because it is so simple. Obviously, we also do a lot of body weight. Like I said before, Tai Chi doesn't use any equipment. So that's a very accessible exercise virtually. So I think that all of those answers, if you keep it simple for them, they're going to be motivated to be to continue to do their workouts. And that's important. We don't want to overwhelm them. We don't want to overwhelm them with time. We don't want to overwhelm them with expense. And we don't want to overwhelm them with something that's too complicated for them to even use in their home. So that's all I have.
That's a good point. Very good.
Oh, I'm doing it.
It's okay. I probably deserved it. Oh. But good point with the simplicity of items. I'm sure everybody's probably thinking in their head, is there a way to even make money off of the equipment end on it? I would probably say, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that, but the affiliate marketing for equipment. I know that when I used to own a in-person boot camp, we did do that for a bit. We just had the affiliate links for Perform Better stuff, and it's maybe a few bucks here and there, but making things simple can't go wrong with that. Making sure that they have it in their house. I know some trainers, they might even be a part of this, have like a package that they will give to their clients to make sure that they are able to perform the exercises. So all things to think about. I like how one of the panel members talked about just make it easy for them. I think it was Dr. Ritchie. Just make it easy for them. Make sure that they purchase this stuff so they can follow along with. Eliminate the excuses for them, because we all know as fitness professionals that many of our clients will do whatever they can not to do the exercises. So if there's any more questions, throw them in there. But we're going to wrap this up. Thank you again. We got a lot of thank yous in the chat. We had a great panel assembled for this. So thank you all for coming. Panel, great stuff, great responses. And I think that everybody's going to immediately take this stuff, apply it, and be better trainers, which we all want. So thank you again, everybody.